Previously on Transformer Chronicles.
All right, it's showtime. Johnny Maggie said they were going to be here this month, so we should be good to go.
Nope. You haven't checked the messages, have you? They cannot make it. Something about a brand of squash and a short person.
What? Okay, well, I know Pat is here, right?
Yep, right here, all set.
Great. So all we really need is one more. So who am I going to pick? Clinton?
No, he did a couple issues ago. And also, he's locked in my basement.
Anthony?
You really didn't check those messages, did you?
Sorry, guys. I can't make it. The trebuchet is broken.
Dang it. Stupid trebuchets. Kathy?
Nope, not here.
Jason?
I mean, his younger brother is right here.
Jarrod, would you like to join this?
Yes, I would. 1,000 times yes.
Well, looks like Yardsale Artist joins us this month, and it's not even an offbeat tale for this Transformers Chronicles.
It's not an offbeat tale?
Oh, no, you're stuck now.
The LONGBOX CRUSADE presents Transformers Chronicles.
Hello, and welcome back to Transformers Chronicles. I'm Delvin, a.k.a. The Dark Web, and in case you're new to the show, welcome. And let me tell you what this thing is all about. We're going on a wild, crazy ride, sometimes corny, talking about the world of Marvel Comics, the Transformers, but I am not going at it alone. Let's see who's up this month. First off, we have the founder of the LONGBOX CRUSADE, the relative novice to the Transformers world, the seeker of the matrix of knowledge. His name is Pat Sampson. Pat, what's going on, man?
Hey, Delvin. Doing all right, but, I'm getting the sense of deja vu. Like I've seen something before. It's like I keep seeing this image of Optimus Prime dying and over again. But I'm like, no, wait a minute. I think that only maybe happened once. It couldn't happen more than once, could it?
I mean, it could and will, but so far, only once. It's only happened once. You may be getting that confused. It may be like a virtual reality simulation that. That
could be. These new VR stuff that they got going on now is pretty cool. So
it's true.
I spend a lot of time on that.
Yeah, and we're not even robots. And like, just remember, Pat, to unplug, touch some grass every now and again, take some deep breaths,
Deep breaths of grass. Okay. Yeah.
Close enough. All right, we're going to move on. And our guest this month, because as you heard in our ever so cleverly written intro, John and Maggie are not joining us this month, should be back next month, hopefully prayerfully. But this month, we have none other than Jarrod Albrecht, the Yardsale Artist, to come pinch hit for us at the last minute. Thank you for being here, Jarrod. What is going on, my friend?
I'll tell you what's been going on. I've been hearing a lot of this. Oh, Anthony's the coolest, and he's got all these Transformers, and he's going to be on the show. And I love having Anthony on the show. But Anthony, he's not here. So I'm just going to strut around the studio, strut, not trip over any cords or cables.
Jarrod?
I think he actually hurt himself.
Oh, God, why?
Oh boy.
Apparently, those two cables were real, as was that one wall, and two things that were real.
You've got to watch out for that virtual reality. It could jump up. That's why I was telling Pat to go out and touch the grass.
Yeah, virtual reality and make sure this virtual insanity is what I call it.
That's what the future's made of.
Yeah.
Look, both of y'all can quit because, I'm not adding all these sound effects.
I'm gonna try to add so many sound effects to the show.
Don't be petty, Jarrod. No one wins. I don't need your civil wall. Stop it.
Hey, but I'm happy to be here. I know I'm not Anthony. I don't have a room full of cool Transformer stuff. But my GoBots collection, outstanding.
That's enough out of you. We're not allowed to talk about GoBots in this show. So Well, dang. Like, I mean, we talk together all the time, so there's not even much. And Jarrod's already been on the show a time or two, even though, apologies, Jarrod, even though it's kind of a tale of the past, it's not really offbeat, but we needed you tonight, man. It was an emergency. I was about to call the Bambulance and everything. So I'm glad that you were able to make it. Thank you so much for being here. And the purpose of this podcast will be tackling all of Marvel's Transformers comics in order, starting with issue 1 and working our way to the series end at issue 80. We will answer any questions that are brought up to the best of our ability and see how these books we loved then as a kid hold up to our eyes as an adult. Now, this podcast is guaranteed to be, you guessed it, more than meets the eye. So, Pat, Jarrod, let's find out what's on the tapes that the Decepticons dug out of the sea and what it means for the very near future. Right after this promo break.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
You like cheap comic books, right? Well, I'm Professor Allen, and I talk about cheap comic books on the Quarterbin Podcast. In every episode, I'll dissect a single comic from my collection, as long as I paid no more than 25 cents for the issue. Forget about $4 new comics that you can read in 4 minutes, or crossover events that can cost $100 to collect. Join me in the Quarterbin, where even bad comics are a bargain, and good ones are a steal. The Quarterbin Podcast is part of the Relatively Geeky Podcast Network. Visit us at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com or search Relatively Geeky or Quarterbin Podcast in iTunes. I guarantee it'll be worth every penny.
We now return to the Transformers.
Welcome back. The issue we will be covering today is Transformers, issue 48, and here is Jarrod with the cover description.
Fort Max is in the corner box, still ripping his head off. Fort Max is colored in all purple, and the background is highlighted in sky blue. The Transformers logo is white lined with black, with more than meets the eye also in white running along the top of the cover. The main action shows Megatron with a smoking fusion cannon standing under what looks to be an orange sun. He is flanked by 3 Decepticons, Ruckus, Crankcase, and honestly, I don't know who it is in the pinkish purple hue thing. They're all looking downward sinisterly at the mangled and smoking corpse of Optimus Prime, who's in a turquoise hue.
Appreciate that description, Jarrod. What do you think about it, man?
Well, in my life, I think I've owned maybe 10 Transformers comics. And gosh golly, gosh darn, if this isn't one of them. That I have owned this book. When I pulled it up and I saw the cover, I was like, oh, I know this cover. I've seen this cover. So let's go back in time to when Jarrod saw this cover first. And I think my impressions remain the same. Let's just talk about what's weird about it. What's weird about it is maybe the almost cartoony faces. They're not as robotic as they are cartoon humanoid. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even talking about the humanoidy faces from the cartoon. I just almost like a different cartoon. Like it's almost like they stepped out of a different cartoon than the Hasbro cartoon. And I don't dislike them. It adds a little character and it makes it memorable. I'm much more easygoing on Transformers because I'm not as steeped in as you guys. So I'm actually more interested in your thoughts on the more cartoony faces. But overall, the composition is pretty cool. I like the way they use the smoke in the red and the half circle at the top to really separate the title fonts and all that from the main action. And then Megatron, he bursts that bubble up top. He's the connective tissue from the bubble up top to the main focus at the bottom. And then you have that sprawled out, possibly dead again, Optimus Prime there on the cover, put in that one color so that his color scheme doesn't jumble the picture too much. It's very smart coloring because he's in a one color, like I mentioned in the cover description. The other Decepticons are in a one color. And all that is really smart because it makes Megatron pop. And as I understand it, the whole point of this is we haven't seen Megatron in a long time in this book. And he's back, kind of.
Kind of. It has been 2 years total time, almost. 1 year, 11 months since we have seen Megatron in the book. He disappeared in a blaze of glory in issue 25. And we haven't seen him since. So your instincts are spot on, Jarrod, in that it was kind of like a what in the world is going on? Megatron's shooting Optimus Prime. Megatron isn't even around. What's going on? So I think it's doing a good job in attracting new viewers, because if you're new, you might, and you know anything about Transformers, you might want to see Megatron, like, standing above his greatest foe, and his greatest foe is not looking like he's having a good day. And if you're an old person, you're like, wait a minute, Megatron is back? How in the world is Megatron back? And so I think it's a well-drawn cover as well. And what I also add is this was the cover that was gifted to me when I reached out to Jose Delbo and his nephew got in touch with me. This was the cover I got. So I got a good blow up size, like 11 by 17 of this cover. So I have a little bit of an extra affectation for this cover too. Pat, what do you think?
Wow, that's really cool that you got that from Jose. And oh, wow. Now it's really special. Really special. And I agree with Jarrod on this. The coloring really makes this pop, the details. And what I really like is how Megatron is just standing out in this. It's just so eye-catching to me that he's standing there, and I like that they did use those muted colors on Optimus and on the kind of other robots that are behind him. I don't know the Decepticons behind him, so I couldn't tell you by looking at them who they are. So
if it makes you feel any better, I don't either. And I'll add here, even though I could add this during the story time, depending on the angle, it was either Megatron and 3 Decepticons or 2. And most of the time it was 2. I went in the book and looked because I was going to be thorough on that cover description and put the names of those 3 Decepticons, but I only saw 2 that were named. So I'm like, okay, I don't know who the heck that third person could possibly be. I don't know.
Oh, well, that's all right. I don't either. So
that's what the listeners are for. Certainly you guys have got those Jim the Joe Junkie type of people who listen to the show. So listeners, you got to let us know who the heck that third one is. We
got listeners. And yeah, they'll let us know.
And Pat, I can't help but quasi host the show. I definitely want to know your thoughts on the
I was just going to answer that.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Yep. I don't know, because I don't know if that's just a Jarrod thing or you've been at this longer than me. So yeah, what you got, man?
Actually, on that too, that face on Megatron is a little bit different looking than what you would normally see. Like you said, I think you nailed it on the head with kind of more cartoony look to him, along with the other. Well, 2 of them have some facial expressions on them. You can definitely see some agony in Optimus Prime's eyes a little bit. His eyes, like the little pupillary parts, little 2 dots are like going above, almost back into his head, giving you that, like he's out of it. But I like the detail on this as well too. Just I know it's a lot of ink work being done, but the detail on it is amazingly good. So I like this one, and I like the blurbs.
Yeah, we did not include the blurbs in the cover description, so let's do that now. So right below and to the right of the Transformers logo, it says the return of Megatron. And in the bottom center of the cover, it says the end of Optimus Prime with question marks and exclamation points. Like what? What is going on? Megatron's returning? Prime's dying already? We just got him back like half a year ago and you're killing him again? What? So, that is the cover in the whole. And since everyone is done with their descriptions, unless someone else has something to add, we're going to rate things like...
I don't know that I got to hear you weigh in on the face thing, Delvin. You're the most traditional Transformers guy here. What did you think of the faces?
So this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, that Jose Delbo has drawn Megatron. Oh. Jose came onto the book about 6-7 months ago or whatever, and he's put his stamp on the book for sure at this point. And he has drawn a lot of Transformers, but he has not had the pleasure of drawing Megatron yet. So I think that is just his little touch that he added to it. And as we're going to see in coming years, we're going to have a few more artists who have their hand at the Transformers, and they're going to have their own little touches to it, either facial expressions or like wiring inside their mouths when they're in pain. There's one of the artists is going to have teeth on the Transformers. Not like pearly whites per se, but like looking like what would be the inside of, or a robot mouth looking somewhat similar to what the inside of a human mouth will look like. So long answer short, Jarrod, it's interpretations. I don't mind it at all. Especially since if you look at the body of Megatron, there's no one who knows anything about the Transformers that will look at that and be like, man, that's just a poorly drawn Megatron. Like, oh no, like Jose showed out on that cover and on Megatron in particular. So I personally don't have any big heartburn or issue with it, Jarrod.
And the expression is dark and sinister with that like evil smiles. It works. It's just different.
Oh yeah. And it sort of matches the tone of the three Decepticons behind them that's kind of looking down like, yeah, we just did some evil deeds. So, yeah.
Right guy whose name we don't know.
Right? Yeah. Decepticon 1, Decepticon 2, the third guy. Like, when did you show up? I don't know. Yeah, you're in with us. So, yeah, cool. All right, we rate things here at Transformers Chronicles on a scale of 1 to 10, and we are about to rate this cover. We can start with Pat. Pat, what would you rate the cover of Transformers 48?
You know what? I think I really like this one, and I'm going to rate it a 9.
Fantastic. Any other words you want to add to that?
No, I think I said it all. I just really like Megatron in this one. He stands out.
Megatron does stand out, and if Optimus Prime is the most famous and well-known Transformer, and I think he is, Megatron's got to be up there because, I mean, he's Optimus's main bad guy. Jarrod, what would you rate the cover of Transformers 48?
Yeah, you got the number one hero. You got the number one villain, drawn maybe slightly differently, but still really well. And it's got a nostalgia factor for me for being one of the few that I owned. I'm going to join Pat on the 9. Actually, I'll go ahead and give it a 9.5.
I'm sorry, Jarrod. Joe Thomas is not one of the guests here.
Oh, it's strict to all on this show as well. Okay, I'll stick with the 9.
I appreciate that. And because I am a homer in that, like, I was personally touched that through Jose's nephew that I got this cover, I am going to give it a bump up to a 10. Strictly for that alone, because I was appreciative, but also it's just a fantastic cover. I remember John, some issues back, mentioned that it was one of the most deceiving covers in Transformers history. I was like, I'll read an issue. It wasn't that deceiving. Like, yeah, it definitely took some creative license. I will agree with John on that, but like, it wasn't that bad. But we can get to that. For now, let's get to Pat, and he will read the credits for this issue.
This episode, we are covering Transformers issue 48. Its on sale date was September 27th, 1988. It's got a cover date of January 1989. Cover price was $1. Story was by Bob Budiansky. Pencils go to Jose Delbo. Inks is Danny Bulinati. Colors, Neil Yamtov. Letters is Bill Oakley. Editor is Don Daly. Cover credits go to Jose Delbo and Dave Hunt. This is all thanks to Mike's Amazing World and tfwiki.net for that information.
Thanks, Pat. Let's get to the synopsis.
It is a world transformed, where things are not what they seem. It is the world of the Transformers.
Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. Transformers.
Robots in disguise. The Transformers from Marvel Comics.
The title of this issue was The Flames of Boltax. Via the Real Vision technology, the Decepticons are able to experience in hologram form the data taken from the 2 tapes the Seacons from last issue retrieved from the Caribbean Sea. The Decepticons make sure this technology worked by testing it on the still-captured Buster Witwicky, then locked him back into his room so he couldn't view the data from them tapes. For Decepticon leader eyes only, am I right? And oh yeah, who are the Decepticon leaders? That would be Ratbat, acting commander, and his number 2, Starscream. They begin to view the tapes and see a Cybertron from millions of years ago. where Optimus Prime was leading a team comprised of Backstreet, Dogfight, and Override to find Boltax. Boltax is a guy who possesses a database that could potentially tip the battle against the Decepticons. It's worth noting that Boltax's area was an agreed-upon neutral point in the Young War, and it's also worth noting that the Decepticons, led by none other than Megatron, were secretly tailing the Autobots the entire way. After dodging traps, Team Autobot makes it past the guards and eventually to Boltax himself, who agrees to give Optimus access to the huge database. Well, not really the huge database, but really knowledge. Knowledge to include that his database, called the Underbase, is the collection of knowledge that underlies the entirety of the core knowledge of the Transformers. Sounds important. Sounds powerful. Oh yeah, Megatron and team trample everything to include Boltax and demands an explanation from Optimus as to why he's there, where Optimus tells Megatron what else he learned, that Boltax is not just the robot, but the entire mountain itself, and the Underbase is too powerful for one Transformer to hold alone. Megatron and crew blast Optimus Prime, and while Megatron preens, a wounded Prime begins to seal off all the vents that contain the Underbase, causing the mountain to overheat and jettison off into space. Oh yeah, this storyline was millions of years ago, so that jettison off energy ball, called the Underbase, is very close to Earth. And it looks like only the Decepticons know about this enormous source of power heading their way. Oh no. Wait, Buster found a way back into the war room and saw this whole thing. Woohoo. Yes. Oh dang, the Decepticons found him spying and Ratbat now has Buster in his claws? Ah, crap. So let's talk about the book on Transformers Chronicles. We take turns bringing up something from the book, talk about highs, lows, whatnot. Discussion forms forthwith. Jarrod's going to start this discussion.
All right. I have a high and a low at the same time, and it's from my main man, Starscream. Starscream's watching this reality vision. He's like, oh, man, I can't believe the Autobots made that. And I'm like, dude, this is the past. You know they're going to make it. Like, you are the dumbest guy in this room. He's acting like it's live television.
Jarrod, allow me a rebuttal here. Like, Starscream might be kind of like underneath the robotic. He might be more my complexion. Because that's what my people do. We shout at the TV, even though we know the TV can't hear.
I definitely had hints of like Mystery Science Theater going on there. I was like, what? Oh, I can't believe they made him. Like, you've met them in the future. Like, you're an idiot. But it made me laugh at the same time. I just go, it's kind of a high. And so yeah, I like Starscream. He's always been one of my favorites. I like sort of his Weasley trying to take over from behind the scenes type of thing. And there was a little bit of that in here as well, but it did make me laugh that he was sort of like constantly acting like he didn't know what the outcome of this whole thing was going to be. But I will leave it at that. There's plenty to talk about in this issue, but I know we got other people who need to talk. So Starscream was both funny and crazy at the same time.
Why, Jarrod, there was some sort of machinations going on with Starscream. You care to point out any?
You know, I can't rightly remember the specific because I just read it this morning in preparation for this. But I do remember him saying, you know, was he the one that specifically knew that it was going to be there in about a week?
No, Soundwave knew it.
Oh,
yeah, Soundwave.
I just remember it's like Starscream. What he did that usual thing where he's like he had some sort of inside thing. Help me out.
I think he's in this is just kind of in little ways belittling Ratbat, and he just underneath his, I don't want to say underneath his breath or whatever, but it's just like, oh yeah, there's Starscream again, just kind of waiting and conniving, and we'll see if you become leader, if you make it as leader, things like that, he would say. And I found that very interesting. I'm like, okay, something's going on here. He's waiting. He's just waiting for that moment. And so I was taking Starscream's what he was saying when he was watching this video was like, oh, well, that's not a way a leader should do it, or that's not, you know,
he was being a turd. That's true.
You know, it's like he was undermining even Megatron watching this video.
Look at this guy, right? But
So
I guess the one thing I do remember him catching on early was, we're going to go watch these tapes. And he's like, well, shouldn't I, I'm second in command. I should post these tapes because, in case something happens to you. God forbid, right?
Right. God forbid. I mean, we don't want anything happening to Rat Bat, right? Yeah. Y'all picked up on a couple of things. Yeah. And towards the end of the book, Jarrod, what you may be thinking about is Soundwave said, hey, I took the data that I got from these tapes, and it looks like the Underbase is about a week out from passing by planet Earth itself. And so Soundwave was relaying the information, but Starscream and Rat-Bat both heard that information. And Rat-Bat was like, heck yeah, I'm about to take this power. This is going to be mine, baby. And Starscream was like, okay, good. Yeah. You just go right ahead thinking that. So yeah, there's that. I mean, I'm sure we're not going to get back to that like next issue or nothing. Probably not. Pat, what do you have for this round?
I like the concept of them going back and seeing an early Prime and an early Megatron kind of do their battles and be a younger version of where they are now. I definitely liked Prime, and they kept saying that too, is like, oh, he wouldn't do that now. He's such a better leader than what he was before. And you can definitely see his early years. He was very kind of naive, very, he wasn't as super commanding as he is now. And I think the guys that he was with, they kind of respected him, but then they also kind of were jabbing him a little bit too. And I found that very interesting in the character and his development.
Yeah. Interesting juxtaposition as opposed to how the Autobots treat Optimus Prime now. And heck, even the Decepticons gave him credit. And it's like, he is the greatest Autobot who ever lived. But that's not who he was here. We did see that this turned out to be that one of those foundational moments that etched the legacy that became Optimus Prime. But sure enough, like, because this is war, right? Like, when you earn your stripes in war, they're not done in a pretty way. And so, yes, he did wind up making sure that this powerful weapon did not wind up in the hands of Megatron. That was the big plus. That is things that could get written in the history books about what he did and how heroic it was. But like the part that he will never forget, ironically enough, this is also a part that makes him the leader that he is that he's able to reflect upon his mistakes. But he made a couple of egregious errors. One, he went to a neutral zone in the first place. And he kind of was like, well, I don't care if it's a neutral zone. This is an opportunity for power. And that power might win this battle. But like, sure, that was a bad mistake. And then the other one was that he allowed Megatron to get in and have access to this weapon to the point where he had to wind up just jettisoning it off into space for the rest of history. Well, at least history until now. So let's just say for 4 million plus years. So yeah, a few tactical errors made by him. Jarrod, I know you like talking about leadership stuff. You want to chime in on any of this?
Well, you're closer to the character of Optimus than I am. So I think you've got it about right. It is interesting seeing him in his raw, younger form, almost like this is, First Lieutenant Prime or Captain Prime, and you see that he's made of what I would call sterner stuff, but that's just me. He's got the grit and he's got the abilities, and it's just all he lacks, and he's getting that is experience. And so what we're seeing is he's got the building blocks, he's got the charisma, and yeah, it's a point well made, Pat, that you're seeing him young. And I did notice how some of his subordinates, especially I think it was Backstreet, kind of sassed him a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was like, okay. But I also thought from a leadership point of view, Prime didn't let that affect him.
No.
It's an old saying that, a nobody can't bother somebody. And I think that's how Prime played it. Like, have your moment, but, and I think the Prime of now being 1989 or whatever, the modern Prime, I don't think they would necessarily sass him like that, but not because he never had to do anything disciplinary, but just because they kind of realized he's not the guy for that, and I think we're seeing that here. So anyway, those are my quick thoughts.
I just had a thought that in his own way, Megatron is very similar to that. The difference is, like, when he has somebody like the person that always gives him that back sass, to use an old-timey term, is Starscream. And a lot of times Starscream would throw a jab at him. He's like, whatever, until he finally just has enough of it. And then Starscream's going to catch a backhand as a result of it, because it's like, I've had enough. You've already been insubordinate, but now you just crossed the line that I'm tired of. Wow. So like Optimus Prime is different in that he probably would get to a point where he's like, okay, enough is enough, but he wouldn't do what Megatron did. But in a sense, similar leadership styles. Yeah, all righty, Jarrod, let's go for a second round. What else do you want to talk about?
I guess we'll talk about the robotic elephant in the room, since I do listen to this podcast and you guys do a good job.
Thanks, man.
Oh, by the way, this is issue 48, which tells me you've now just finished 4 years of continuity.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations on that. This is closed out the 4th year of the Transformers comic book. And there may have been miniseries and stuff involved I'm not aware of, but roundabouts there. Anyway, the robotic elephant in the room is what John brought up. He called this a super deceptive cover. We talked about it in the cover description. So what's going on here? Yes, you get Megatron and you get Megatron versus Optimus, but essentially it's told in flashback. It's a flashback episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we here at LONGBOX CRUSADE have our thoughts about flashback episodes, especially from when we were watching 54 Sherlock Holmes. Like, we go, here comes the flashback. And sometimes we liked it. Most of the times we picked on it. And honestly, it's easy for me to say that I was fine with it. I think the smartest thing that Big Budiansky did with this was show us that developing leadership of Optimus. That's what makes it interesting. And it's always interesting to go back to Cybertron, get to see a glimpse into what it was before.
Mm-hmm.
So those things worked well on me. And I thought, I get it. It's a flashback episode, but I wasn't reading it live and craving it like you and Jonathan were. So I think I get why Jonathan, basically called out a bait and switch. So I guess for my turn, I'm going to actually hand it back to you, Delvin. I need to know your perspective on this. I think I get Jonathan's, and I'm not mad at him for it. If I was a kid reading this, I'd be Megatron's, he's not. But how did you feel live reading this?
Man, I don't remember. That was 1989. Like, I can't.
Gummy bears.
Yeah, you're right. That was 34 years ago or something like that. Man, I don't know. But I can at least draw a few parallels. Well, Bob Budiansky did that with Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime was blown up in issue 24. In issue 40, Optimus Prime was brought back, sort of, because he was
a video game one.
He was a video game character that Ethan Zachary had kept over. And sure enough, in a couple of issues after that, they brought back the real Optimus Prime. So it was fair game that they said Megatron's back from 4 million years ago or so. But it's the character, and he was actually interacting with Pat. What were you going to say?
Well, I can kind of answer a little bit of that, how I felt, because going through this series, I've never read it. So, and I've been reading it, every month in a constant order. So I have that kind of, I guess, mentality or that thought of, I can't wait to read the next issue, because I've never read ahead. And so when I saw this cover, like, wait a minute, they're bringing back Megatron right now. And so I was kind of excited for it. And then when I found out that, wait a minute, it's just a, flashback, but it was a good flashback. I thought it was, instead of doing it, the way they did Prime was like, okay, a video game. He did a better job on this one, I think. And just the detail and other story level or story creations that are going on now. Like, what is the Underbase? Is a database for all the bigger stuff? What can it do? What does it know? is it a big robot now? I don't know. I don't know what to expect out of this thing, but I think it helped build up that, okay, where's this going? Why it's so powerful, I guess, that it can, if someone gets it, is it bigger than, the Matrix, is it bigger than that, than the Life Matrix or that? I don't know. So I'm really interested in that way. But yeah, I was really excited to see Megatron. And then it was like, oh, but still good story.
To answer your question overall, Jarrod. I didn't feel deceived about it because last issue, they at least gave you the hint that, yes, this is going to be a story that involves Megatron, but it's not going to be in present continuity. But it still was a great way to sell a cover. I absolutely cannot let this episode of Transformers Chronicles go by, this issue of issue 48 go by without mentioning the point that Pat did. In issue 47, Pat wondered, he's like, well, this is the Underbase saga. What is the Underbase? And in the first part of this 4-part miniseries, in part 1, the Decepticons found these 2 tapes that they got intel on that were at a certain part of the ocean of Earth, and they retrieved them, even though there was a little bit of Autobot interference that happened. So this part of the Underbase saga, we got to see exactly what the Underbase was. The Underbase is a collection. Essentially, every Transformer has, like, their experience and everything, their personality. That is called a database. The Underbase is the collection of literally every Transformer that ever existed, and all of their collective knowledge that has been formed. So it is a very powerful thing. And it was so powerful that this guy, Boltax, basically, transformed himself, and he is the holder of all of this information of the Underbase. And so what happened at the end was that in order for it to not fall into the hands of the Decepticons, then Optimus Prime had to jettison it off into space. But yes, the Underbase, which is this collection of all of the databases from every Transformer that ever existed, is in a part of what it is. And so, yes, if one person were to take that, or one Autobot or Decepticon were to take that, then presumably they would have the power of literally every Transformer that ever existed. However, Optimus Prime said, well, I also learned that one person was not meant to have all of this power. It would just simply be too much for one person to take or one person to tolerate. So we now know what the Underbase is in part 2 of the Underbase saga. So that is a very important point that I had to bring up. I'm getting a head nod from Jarrod. I think I'm getting a head nod from Pat. Pat, you get me on that?
I am, definitely.
Okay, because sometimes you're like, should I remember this robot or should I remember this thing? You should remember.
You should remember it. Yeah.
You should remember this thing. This thing is important.
Yeah, and I think Bob is doing a good job of making sure that you do on this one. Definitely.
All right. So we have one more round since it's just the 3 of us talking. If anyone else has anything they want to add, Jarrod?
Sure. I think you mentioned this was Jose Delbo's first book.
Pencil? No, not his first. No, he's been on the book for a few months at this point.
All right. Well, scratch that, but it doesn't make this any less important. They got this guy drawing his big booty Ansky off here, man. He's having to draw a lot. I mean, page 1 is a Salvador Dali painting in kind of a form. Because I was all like, hello, Dali. Anyway, but it's bonkers as all get out. And then he's, of course, multiple robots. Of course, it's Transformers. You expect that. But then having to sort of craft a Cybertron of the past, craft a younger looking Optimus. He's not a semi-truck, but he's kind of in that form. Everybody's it's super in the past, so there's no pure 1-to-1 for a modern 80s era vehicle. So he has to get a little creative with their designs. Now, I don't know if this is like the first appearance of like his buddies. Like I mentioned Backstreet. Is this the first time we ever see this guy?
No, Jared, let me tell you. Backstreet
I teed you up.
is back.
All right.
And I saw that. Yeah, all right.
And Pat should remember that Backstreet came around like a couple of issues ago, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because he also used the same joke there.
I intentionally picked Backstreet, hoping Pat would chime in on that. I honestly didn't remember, though. The question was legit. Like, are these guys that have they fallen by, in battle in the past, or have all these guys made it to the modern era? I don't know, but I know that their designs have to be different. And so this is all about Jose Delbo. He's having to do all those things. I mean, just the panel alone where the aircraft guy has to like cut up all the mechanical vines. Oh my gosh, his inker was probably like, "Oh, Jose, why?" Because that is nuts. And of course, he's got to do the human characters as well. He's just got a lot going on. He has to introduce Boltax and these small golden creature. It's just he has to do so much, and he does a great job. And I shouldn't just laugh at his inker. His inker gets a ton of props because inking this kind of stuff is an absolute pain. So Danny Bulanati,
Yep.
you and Jose had a lot to do, and you did it. So that's that.
This book was $1 too.
Yeah. Wow.
This book was $1, and man, for whatever, like with this being a toy property, of course, and wanting to showcase a few toys, introduce a few toys, yeah, absolutely. The concepts of coming up with a Optimus Prime from 4 million years ago, and what would he look like? He had to think about that and create it. And yeah, that first splash page, which was just like this dystopian nightmare that was going on, like that Buster Witwicky was apparently in. He came up with that. You're right. The creativity is just insane, because that Bob Budiansky just kind of did like you have told me that you've done with some of your artists, where you're just like, go, I need a hellscape, an alien hellscape. I'm not going to tell you how to draw it. You draw it, go. And I'm sure that Bob like looked at that, was just like, oh, dang. he done good. He done real good.
While we're talking about comic craft real quick, this is something that you guys are so used to, you don't even notice anymore, I bet. But I want to shout out the letterer. I love the consistency of regular speech balloons for Witwicky and the humans, and the square, not just square, but with the little electronica sparky things in the corners of each box is something. When I went to read this, I was like, oh yeah, Transformers was so good at this consistency. So just to bring up a little bit more of the craft, it's a great book.
Yeah. And I'll go off of what Jarrett was saying about the art and the panels. Is just Jose, just the detail in these panels. I don't think there's some panels that it isn't, there's background and there's stuff in the background on all of these panels compared to how, issues before Jose did it. They were just, it's just a blank background. And, I remember Jonathan just going, okay, it's just a blank background. Yeah. There's details in these backgrounds that are just crazy detailed. Man, hats off to him. I don't know how he was putting this out, if he's that guy that I'm doing this on a month, and was he doing another comic? Was this the only comic he was doing? I don't know. I'd be interested to find out if he was doing some other ones. But if this was his only one, he was pumping out this, man, amazing work by him.
Yeah, the quality is just of a supreme level. Absolutely. Gentlemen, I'm trying to think, did we miss anything?
I got one more thing I want to just quickly talk about. Let's talk about Buster, right?
Okay.
There's got to be something else going on with Buster through this little, 4-parter, I would think, right?
Right.
So I'm kind of interested. You see him kind of bumbling around a little bit, and it's like, was he okay just being like the king of the island that he was on?
It was a weird backstory.
I was like, I'm trying to remember it in the other one. I think they saw it. I think he was in the commercial or something, right? And they had his dad go.
Yeah, he was the Decepticons put him kind of like as a human front of the king of Club Con. That they had him as. But as soon as they found the tapes, they went ahead and scrapped that. So I'm sure some people paid their good money and they're like, nope, sorry, no refunds.
Yeah. You can change that.
Yep.
But obviously there's something going on with Buster, for Bob to bring him back. And
well, now he's the only link to get this information to the good guys.
That's true.
About the Underbase.
Not quite. Well, about the Underbase, yes.
Yeah.
But as of right now, the Autobots do know where the Decepticons are because Blaster was there last issue. And Blaster was, and he knows that there were tapes that had information on them, even though he didn't know what that information was. So there's a couple of links. But the person who knows the most right now about what's going on with the Decepticon plot is Buster Witwicky. And how the heck is he going to relay that information to the Autobots? I have no idea. And I mean that. I actually don't remember. So I can tell you that information is clearly going to be coming up next issue. But how he gets that information to the Autobots or how the Autobots get to the Decepticons, I don't know. So I will be waiting till next month to find out along with everybody else. Bob doesn't forget a human being that he's involved in his story. I remember thinking that we weren't going to see those kids that got rocketed off into outer space ever again, and that wasn't true. He got all of those 4 kids back to planet Earth and Daisy. And Daisy, can't forget Daisy, the teddy bear. And like they all got home safe and sound. So he looked out for them. So clearly there is some storyline afoot for Buster Witwicky that the Autobots are going to rescue him, or he's going to escape from the clutches of the Decepticons, or maybe, I don't know. And then this book ended with Ratbat having him in his claws, and Ratbat wasn't happy with him. So who knows what's going to happen to Buster? But thank you. That was worth mentioning that Buster Witwicky played a background role in this book right until the end, where he took front and center to where he had been spying in on the Decepticons nearly the entire time and found out the information that they knew about this Underbase. But what's to happen next? I do not know. Now's the time for us to talk about Who Had the Touch, where we talk about which character in the book stood out the most: Autobot, Decepticon, or Human. Hat. For Transformers 48, who had the touch to you?
Oh boy. There's a few to choose from. I guess I'll go with the obvious on this one. It was Prime in the end. I think he came through, had the touch to be able to, go, well, I can't let Megatron keep this. And the only thing best to do is just let it go up out into space, and no one gets it then. As much as I came here to get it, I can't get it. So away you go. So I'd say Prime at this point.
Okay. Gotcha. Jarrod?
I'd probably say Prime as well. But as a backup, I was quite taken with Ratbat. It's one thing to hear you guys talk about on the show how Ratbat's sort of being the man right now, but it's a whole other thing to see it happening. And it's just a character I wasn't too familiar with. I think when you guys first started talking about Ratbat, it might have been sometime like Car Wash of Doom. Something like that. Yeah. And he sounded kind of like the way you guys described him, almost like a bean counter, like a guy from finance and accounting,
Mm-hmm.
And he seems to be doing a pretty good job running things in the absence of Megatron. So good on you, Ratbat.
He is. He's a fuel auditor. That is his function. And he came from Cybertron, and in the absence of leadership that occurred, he filled the void. Megatron went out in a blaze of glory, and Shockwave a few issues ago wound up getting his rocket booster shot out, and he fell back to Earth, and he has not been heard from. So no one knows where the heck Shockwave is at this point. So there was no leader. Starscream wasn't even around, by the way. It was Ratbat's plan that he completely raided and pillaged the Ark and wound up getting some fallen Decepticons back, to include Starscream. So
Okay.
There was no one else. He wound up, enjoying the two sweetest words in the English language: default, default, default. So it's up to me now. Who had the touch to me? Actually, I'm going to go with Megatron. I think Megatron had the touch because, like, I like he's conniving in like he is strong enough that like he could have figured out all those traps. Heck, he probably could have blasted through all the traps and everything, but he just sat there and just sort of closely followed Optimus Prime and his team and just let Optimus Prime figure it out and just conserved his energy. But when it was time for him to do some bad guy-esque, he did some bad guy-esque because the acolytes were like, trouble will, befall you if you come this way. And he was like, oh, no, we're going to give those gifts to you. Like, oh, that was a cold line. It just blew the acolytes apart. Boltax was like, no, dude, you don't want to be here. And he just punched a hole through him and then just had the times like, yeah, Optimus Prime, tell me what's going on. And Optimus Prime was like, and Megatron was like, that's enough. It's like, you just want to keep this power for yourself, and we are going to stop you from doing that. We're going to blow you away. And he did, to the point where Optimus Prime pretty much had to limp off hurt in order to do the things. But I absolutely understand what y'all meant by Prime being the person who had the touch, because he did a heroic deed, but he did the heroic deed after he made a huge, huge, huge misstep that he shouldn't have made. But he was a young leader. And as we all know, young leaders make mistakes, and the ability to not make that mistake again is what makes you a better leader. But I digress. If we have talked about the touch, then someone had to be out of touch. We talk about the character that was the worst in the book and forgets to remember what an illusion was and what was real in the segment called Less Than Meets the Eye. Jarrod, who do you think was less than meets the eye?
Man, I've got it down between my boy Starscream, who kept acting like he's watching a live broadcast or something, or my bit at the beginning, which was Buster Witwicky managing to trip over and smack his face into the only like two things in the room that were real. So I'll go with Buster. Like, not only did he do that, he also fell to the Starscream trap because he's like, "There's Optimus. I gotta tell him what." Oh wait, I forgot. These are like, you forgot like 30 seconds ago. You were in the VR simulator, and then he smacked his face into one of the only real things in the entire room. So Buster, I love you, but you are less than meets the eye.
Pat.
I'm agreeing with Jarrod on this one. It's Buster all the way.
Not for me. I guess I'm Team Decepticon because, with the little bit that I do remember, I'm going to pick Ratbat as less than meets the eye. Like, we have hinted about this for a while on the show that like John hinted at it, like, and gave Ratbat his less than meets the eye some time ago because he said, maybe you shouldn't have revived Starscream because maybe that was a mistake because like this whole issue, Starscream be scheming, and that's what Starscream be doing. He schemes, and Ratbat is going to regret the decision that he made. And that's not even, that is a foreshadow, but like it's one that you're going to find out about very, very soon. But like he was tricked by a smooth criminal. How about that? That's a very good way of putting it. So
Ratbat, are you okay?
Yeah,
are you okay? Are you okay, Ratbat?
He is now, but he might not be.
Ratbat has fallen into, I'm going to do Jarrod's leadership classes on you now. It's called empty chair syndrome, where you want to staff everything. So he was trying to get, it sounds like he's trying to get bodies to staff everything, and you're afraid to have an empty chair. But in reality, having a position unstaffed is better than having the wrong person in that position. So he just empty chaired himself into big trouble. That's Jarrod's free lesson to you guys, which will probably end up cutting room floor.
No, it probably won't be. If anything, we need to pick up some fans from India, Jarrod. So
I can help you. I can help you there.
Now is the time for overall ratings of the book. 1 to 10, y'all. You know how we do. We are going to rate this thing, and we'll start with Pat again. Pat, what would you rate this flashback issue of Transformers 48?
I was torn a little bit because it was a flashback. I was excited for Megatron and then found out that it wasn't really real. But the overall story and the building that's going on in this one again, I really enjoyed it. So I'm at an 8.
Okay. You know what? I'll go next. I've been saving myself for last. I'll put myself second here. And I'm going to go 9. It was really good. And what I like about this is this issue and last, both of them were kind of shorter stories. They didn't run the full length of a comic book at this time, but it's for very intentional pacing. Like I mentioned, part 1 of this storyline, they retrieved the data. The Decepticons retrieved data that they needed for some power source that we didn't know about. Part 2, we find out about this power source. In part 3, like without even, have you even looked as far at any preview or anything for 49 or anything? Pat,
No.
Pat, what would you think is going to happen in issue 49 based off of what I just mentioned? Part 1, the Decepticons found out that these tapes had fallen and it had some very valuable information. Part 2, they find out about the Underbase, and it is going to be on planet Earth or around planet Earth's orbit in less than 1 week. What do you think part 3 is going to be about?
How the Autobots get that information and go, okay, now we need to beat the Decepticons, figure out their game plan on what they're going to do, and then it's going to come, and the conclusion is going to be, all right, we're ready to fight. We're all here. And then part 4 is the battle for this device.
Okay. Jarrod, you got any guesses, man?
Pretty much like Pat. I figure we're going to see the Decepticons going to get the Underbase, and somehow the Autobots find out about it's got to be via Witwicky, I would think. So maybe he escapes or something.
Okay.
But it's definitely got a great cliffhanger. I know I haven't given my score yet, but that's going to factor in.
Yeah, excellent cliffhanger. It seems like there's been some good buildup. We know, I can tell you it's a 4-part story. Part 3 is coming up, and you know that penultimate part of that book, like, is where usually all the S hits the fan or whatever. So we're going to see that. And it was the set up to all the S hitting the fan was very well done. And I'm appreciative of that even as an adult now. I know I was excited for as a kid, but I'm super excited to see how the eyes of the listeners and how Pat is going to be viewing 49 and 50 coming up. Jarrod, what would you rate the book?
I am with Pat on an 8. I think it's really good, and I'm just a guy coming into it, but flashback didn't bother me so much. I did go, oh, okay, it's flashback. So I did understand sort of Jonathan's perspective in the earlier episode, but I really like the cliffhanger. That's its strongest point. That does make me go, okay. And knowing what I know, like you were saying about comic beats, this was 2 of 4. So if I was writing this at the end of 3 is where whomever, and if I was writing it, it would be a Decepticon would actually get what they want and they'd get their hands on the Underbase, and it would be too much for them and it would destroy them. And since I've never really heard of Ratbat before, my money's on him. I think he gets this thing and it overpowers him and it destroys him, and that's the end of Ratbat. But I don't know Transformers like you guys do, but that's how Jarrod would write it. Like, I would let the bad guys win because the whole point is that it is too much for a single person.
Okay. Understood. And I hope that I have set the table very well for Transformers Chronicles 49 and Transformers Chronicles 50. Like, I'm looking forward to it. I'm chomping at the bit. So I'm like seriously just looking forward to it. So
I need the last panel of the next one to be I got it. And then the first panel of issue 4 to be can't handle it.
Gotcha. That's how you would write it?
Absolutely.
So you've got to at least, if you're like assuming John and Maggie come back next month, and I believe they will, we'll have a full house, but you got to at least read 49 and 50 and see how close you were to your predictions. I hope that I had a good poker face and didn't reveal anything.
No, I am completely guessing. So, which may show through to longtime Transformers fans might go, he's way off. But hey, maybe I'm close. Who knows?
Who knows? And with that, we are going to talk about Transformers Spotlight, John's segment of the show. Can't wait for him to be back to read it. I miss my friend, where he discusses a particular Transformer which was featured in today's issue. And today we're talking about Crankcase. Looking on tf.wiki.net, if you look up Crankcase, you will find 4 instances of Crankcase. One of those belonged to G.I. Joe, which is forbidden to ever be discussed on this show. They are our mortal enemy. Pipe down, Jerry.
Wait a minute.
Pat, half of you pipe down. Half of you pipe down. The Transformer side stay. The G.I. Joe side pipe. The other 2 refer to the live action movies, and I'm out of energy. So I can't express adequately the energy that I need to show my disdain for those. We're talking about the Crankcase that was in this book. Function, data collector. Slogan, things are never as good as they seem. A wheezing, whining ingrate. As welcome as a rash of rust rot. The worse things get, the happier he is. Enjoys complaining about everything. Equipped with vast memory storage capacity and shell-resistant armor. Also equipped with infrared probes that penetrate and analyze enemy circuitry. He's armed with 2 high-impact laser blasters and a distortion modulator that scrambles enemy cerebral impulses. His strength is an 8, intelligence 6, speed 3, endurance 9, rank 7, courage 7, firepower 8, and skill is an 8. Crankcase transforms into a 4-wheel drive off-road vehicle resembling a Land Rover from 1990. Similar to the other Trigger Cons, he has flip-out weaponry, which in his case are 2 double-barreled laser blasters, which deploy from his robot mode from the backpack shoulders using a gear mechanism. In vehicle mode, they flip out from his camper and through his windshield. The windshield he had just washed, thank you very much. Some people. None of the Trigger Cons or Trigger Bots were released into Kara's Transformers line. It figures that he got forgotten as usual. I get the feeling no one likes this dude. Sucks to suck, I guess. Thank you to tfwiki.net and tfu.info, and both of those sites didn't like this dude either, so why should we?
From the description, I can't tell if he's an Autobot or a Decepticon.
Oh, he is a Decepticon.
Oh, okay, because I was like, man, he's like the turd of the Autobots.
No, he's the turd of the Decepticons. Like he it looks like he might be the Buck Nasty of the Decepticons, Jared. Now on to a promo break.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
This is an imaginary podcast, which may never have happened.
The Shortbox Showcase.
But then again may have. About a father and daughter. I'm Professor Allen.
And I'm Emily.
Who came from Ohio and talked about comics.
Identity Crisis.
Lone Wolf and Cub.
Hergé's Tintin.
White Tiger. It tells of their rise to glory, when the great guests were yet to be booked.
I didn't know this was going to be the Jimmy Olsen Hate Podcast.
It's always the Jimmy Olsen Hate Podcast.
And the great feats of editing not yet performed.
Ultraman, this is Ultra 7, this is Ultraman Jack, and this is Ultraman Taro, and this is Ultraman Leo, and this is Ultraman...
Of how they spoke at length.
When I read a comic, story comes first and art comes second.
Continuity is really the brainchild of nitpicking nerds the world over.
Those are our people, Emily. And reviewed in brief tales that explore creatively the bounds of a given character's history.
Superman has basically the same relationship with Wonder Woman that he has with Batman.
Of brilliant creators before their fall from grace. This is the era where Miller is at the height of his creative and artistic powers, and the ability of strong writing to encapsulate and transcend its time.
Flash of Two Earths by Gardner Fox.
This is an imaginary podcast. Aren't they all? Shortbox Showcase is part of the Relatively Geeky family of podcasts. Check us out on the web at relativelygeekypodcast.blogspot.com. or search in iTunes for Relatively Geeky or Shortbox Showcase. And remember, we're not experts.
We're just family.
We now return to the Transformers.
Now's the time for transmissions where we heap praise upon the audience for listening to us. Thank you all. We appreciate all the love and attention we get from the show. And we are going to be talking about Transformers issue 45. And we will go and talk about the social media shares and retweets.
We got our boy Serpy Matt.
And our friend Luis at 007 Vintage.
He is on this very show right this minute. It is Jarrod Albrecht, the Yardsale Artist.
And we got Clell Cool Bell Lawrence.
Where you go, Clell?
Coffee and Comics.
And last but not least, Ed Moore. Thank you all. We have a couple of comments as well. Jarrod, if you want to read one.
Sure. We got Matt Passo, a.k.a. Serpy Matt. He said, I always liked the Skull Grin Pretender shell, and the newest figure of him was also great. What this issue did is make me realize there needs to be a whole series of nothing but one-off Transformer stories that involve them trying to blend into the human world. Hey, that one-off stories, that's where I come in. Skull Grin turning from a cryptid to a movie star is not something I ever knew I needed, but man, I'm glad it exists.
That was a good, fun issue.
Yeah, it was. It was offbeat for sure, but it was fun. And yeah, they could come up with hundreds of these type slice of life with the Transformer issues. It would have been a good idea, kind of like that special missions from the show that shall not be named. Go ahead, Pat.
All right, I'll take our next one from Anthony Geraldo.
Rico.
Suave. Anthony says, she's always reminded me, and she is, as he's speaking of...
Circuit Breaker?
No.
Circuit Breaker.
Oh, wait, probably. Yes.
He reminds me of the lady from Superman 3 that got turned into a robot.
Yep. And so it also reminds M. Anthony Geraldo of the lady from Superman 3 as well that became the robot. So Circuit Breaker, yeah, I can see that.
It's cool to see old Mag in the chat. I haven't seen him around a while. He should come over to G.I. Joe.
Hey. No vamping for your shows on this one. Transformers. We got a few comments from Spotify as well. I'll start with one, and then we can go around and just read them. From Heinz Cook. Heinz said, awesome like always. Dude, thank you very much for your kind words, and thank you for replying on Spotify too. Jarrod, would you take one, please?
Sure, we got Jim, and Jim says, really have enjoyed all the reviews of these comics. Makes me wish I would have read them as a kid. Keep up the great job, and Yo Joe.
The Yo Joe was not a part of it. It was not. Strike that from the record, Siri. Strike that from. Okay, good. Pat, your turn.
I'm going to take the last one from Scotty Cameron. And Scotty says, great episode. Appreciate the reviews of issue 45 and the return of Circuit Breaker. This issue I have in my collection. Cool. And thank you, Scotty, for always commenting on Spotify. It helps with the algorithm out there. So if you're on Spotify, make sure you go out there and comment as well.
And we love to read all of your comments. And if we have a bunch of them, then we'll read names at a very minimum. We promise you that. But if you keep bumping us up there in that algorithm and more people come and listen to our show, we love to have you, and we love to have a bigger following. We'd appreciate that. If we happen to miss anyone, we do apologize. It's a good problem to have, but we don't want to forget anyone. Ping us on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram. We will correct it next issue. Ladies, gentlemen, robots, that is the show. Please come back and join us for next episode where we discuss Transformers issue 49, where we see part 3 of the Underbase saga, where it looks like we're going to see some Decepticon on Decepticon action. You usually have to pay double for that.
Oh, yeah.
And if you like to hear more from us, y'all, Longbox Crusade, we are all over the social medias. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You look for Longbox Crusade, you could find us. Might want to find us on podcasts because, this is a podcast. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, most podcatchers to include the aforementioned Spotify. You look for Longbox Crusade, you will find us. We have a Patreon feed. Also, you can join our Crusaders Club. Look for Longbox Crusade. You could join us up for $1 a month. That's right, y'all. Only $1 a month. We have a YouTube channel too. Like and subscribe, please. We have a do it live stream once a month, every second Sunday, 4:30 p.m. And occasionally, like for the month of May. This month we push it for the 3rd. It doesn't matter, does it? No. We're normally do a live stream. We do it once a month, every second Sunday. And we also have Come Out to Play, a New Warriors podcast that I host, and we drop podcast content on YouTube all the time. Jarrod, why don't you tell us about a show that you just started?
Oh, okay. I just started a little show with our friend Chris, Black Belt Chris, and it's called Best Under 5, where Chris and I are watching audience-suggested movies that have a 4.9 or lower on IMDb and seeing if they are underrated or not. So thanks for the plug.
You are welcome, Jarrod. And there's even a voicemail. You can leave us voicemail comments on 707-532-5269. That is 707-532-LBOX.
Pick up the phone.
Pick it up. Even older school, you can, well, no, slightly newer school. You can email us at contact@longboxcrusade.com. Pat, let us know where you can be found out on the social medias, dude.
Well, Delvin, I'm glad you asked. You can find me on the X at Christatos01. Where can you be found, Delvin?
I can be found on Twitter, DEE_RAY1977, and on Instagram at Delvin Ray. Jarrod, you are the last person, but clearly the most important. You made the show tonight, man. I appreciate you. Tell everybody about where you can be found online.
Yes, sir. I am at Yardsale Artist. That's X, Facebook, Instagram. It's all at Yardsale Artist. You can check out my artworks at www.theyardsaleartist.com.
Thank you, everybody, and see y'all next time. And remember, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Till all are one.
Till all are one.
Till all are one.
You got the touch. You got the power. Yeah.
All songs, song clips, and characters discussed are copyright of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended, and it is for entertainment purposes only. We are just fans that like to share our love of comics.
Thank you for listening.
You guys don't do a segment on this show around the ads, do you?
No.
Mm-mm.
That's a crime, because these are wonderful ads. It's all video games of the 80s and cereal and RPGs. But all right, I'll shut up.
Yeah, just shut up.
Do you guys see the inside front cover for the Ultra with the Nintendo and the turtles?
Yep. Classic.
You can put this in an outtake if you want, Delvin, but here's a fun fact about Ultra. It's just Konami. Konami had to make a shell corporation because Nintendo licensing said each third-party gaming company could only release 5 games a year. And Konami was like, okay, welcome Ultra, the new gaming company. It was Konami breaking the rules. Anyway, I'm sorry. Let's proceed.